I hope this video is something for my children and my children's children to learn something from my life. I came into this world with nothing, and I'm going to leave with nothing. And I through the years, felt that the harder I worked, that the luckier I got. And over time, I learned that it was something more than luck. I learned that God was there with me during the tough times. And I also learned that He was also there with me during the good times, and that He had provided for me. And the further I went along in this journey, I began to realize that everything belongs to Him, that I didn't earn it, I don't deserve it, that I do appreciate it. Lessons that I hope that you will learn is that for those who have been given much, much is expected.
When John looks at a problem, he looks at it from every angle possible.
My brother has always been in my corner.
I've always had great respect for him as a man.
You get John into a situation, he'll figure out how it works very quickly.
I think entrepreneurial skills come from learning hard work. I think the biggest skill of entrepreneurship for me is really learning to overcome any obstacles and be able to go forward and get that done. I mowed yards. As a kid, I had a paper route. I worked as a busboy at Denny's and Continental Inn, a couple of different restaurants there that I had done. I think my first job was selling Christmas cards.
I saw him putting on his coat. He had a coat that kind of an overcoat. And he went over and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to go sell some of these Christmas cards that for the school."
I'd gone down all on this side and all on this side, so I got into all 40 houses and not sold any Christmas cards.
And he came in and all bundled up and red-faced and had not sold a single box of cards.
It wasn't but a short time I looked up and he was putting on his coat again. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going across the street and work that block down there."
And he tried to get me to go out with him again, and I said, you know, that's it. It's too cold for me.
Got warmed up a little bit and went down across Floyd Road over here and started selling and sold the first 7 houses I stopped at.
That is a great learning experience in salesmanship. Is just because one person tells you no doesn't mean anything.
I was adopted at birth in 1955. I was 6 weeks old when my parents came and got me from an orphanage in Denver, Colorado.
Both my brother and I knew from the very beginning that we were adopted. It was that we were wanted, that we were chosen, and that we were very special.
How many months?
He was 6 weeks old.
He was 6 weeks. And she got her wish. And
I think that's the most important thing about the adoption in our household is that we knew about it from the beginning. We always felt loved.
Gives you a great feeling, because you know that you have parents who really wanted you and worked hard to get you, and it's been a great experience for me.
a new experience for all of us, but we loved it.
I went to this church from 1956 until I quit going, which was about 16 years old, something like that. The school still looks the same. They've obviously added another church on out here, but the hallways and the classrooms and so forth, I wish we could go inside. Looks like what I remember as a kid in terms of being here. This is the core of where my life was, from thoughts on religion to thoughts on school to not learning to read to having to change schools because of education and so forth. That a lot of the core being who I am is kind of around what happened at St. Paul's and what happened in this Catholic Church.
About the third grade, I remember that he had a teacher named Mrs. Green there at the Catholic Church who said, called us, I guess. And I went up and talked to Mrs. Green, and she said, I don't know what it is, Mr. Knox, but he's not getting it on the reading. And she said the Richardson Public Schools is putting in a special course for students that have a hard time reading.
And so I couldn't read like other kids did, and so I felt very stupid.
Well, he'd open up a book, and he'd start at the bottom, at the middle of the page, and go back and forth like that. And I said, what are they teaching you at that Catholic school?
I ended up switching, and there was a special program within the public schools they did, but then there was also a special program that they had for dyslexic kids that my parents had learned about, that had been created by these doctors Doman and Delicato, and basically was reteaching the brain.
I was involved in a class that was held at the rec center for several children, one of whom was my brother, and our job was to help train them to move in such a manner that they were mimicking the way normal brain patterns work. We walk, swinging our arms, our left foot is out, our right arm is out, and so on. So the patterning was a crawling practice.
I think it helped. It helped because I know John needed to have glasses. We discovered that. So after he'd been doing that, the doctor that was treating him, he had bifocals, and it was exactly the opposite from the way most bifocals were. And so anyway, the doctor kept saying, well, he doesn't have any depth perception. And so then after he'd been doing the creeping and crawling exercises, the doctor discovered that he had gotten some improvement in his depth perception.
When you're 9 or 10 years old, or ever how old I was doing that, you didn't want to do it. You disliked it. My mom continued to believe that it helped me a great deal, and so through the University of Plano and some other programs there that had that, they had me engaged in doing that. The fourth grade was the only time I was really in kind of a special class that was outside of the regular schools, and then after that I was pretty much doing regular school. I was somewhat of a loner, but had a few people that I hung out with, and that was true not just in elementary school that you're asking about, but also middle school and into high school. That I would have one or two friends at different points in time that I would hang out with, but never very social, never very engaged, or the popular kid in class, so to speak. I was a little bit of a nerd, I mean, it's interesting now, my kids look at my pictures from back during those days and go, you were clearly a nerd. But and I was, and kind of felt that way. Photography was a big part of my life. I got into photography when I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and it became something that I really enjoyed. I learned how to develop film and print the pictures and do the darkroom side, and that was very enjoyable to me. And I liked working in the darkroom. You could be creative, figure out different ways and different things of doing it. I think it was photography that was really where I initially learned about business and how to run a business and how to make money, how to market, how to do that. At one point I was doing so many weddings, I wanted to cut down on the number of weddings, so I doubled my prices, and I thought I'll do fewer weddings, and all of a sudden I was the most expensive photographer in Richardson, Texas, and so people thought I was even better because I charged more, and so I ended up getting more business instead of less business. So it was a very interesting lesson in that.
He always had some money, and he wanted to work. He'd find things to work for. Well, on that he worked on the annual at school, and we had a dark room in our house that we'd put in for him. And I remember one night I went in there about 2 o'clock in the morning. He had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And I said, why don't you go to bed? He said, I promised them that, you know, these gals that were putting together the annual for the high school, I promised them that I would have this thing ready in the morning. And he was sitting there blowing up and had it in the whatever the developing water, and he had to have that picture for them at school the next morning.
I think as a kid who started off doing weddings when he was 15 years old, and his mother was having to drive him to weddings and to even get there, you start learning how to interact with adults. And so I learned to get along with adults as a teenager, and it was very much of a growing experience for me, and learning how to deal with people and manage that side of it was a great experience for me.
That was quite an enterprise for him to be taken care of when he was still in high school.
This is the house I grew up in.
Oh,
Right over here, 637 Downing. Back when I was a little kid, this was a huge house. I remember this room being a little black and white TV that was about this big around. This scar in the bottom of my chin was this exact step right here, right where that little mark is. On there is the scar that's on that as a kid falling and hitting my chin on that step. My sister's was the first room there. And guess whose room this was? A little smaller than I remember. This had a big bookcase over here on this wall where that was, and my bed was over in here somewhere. But this was my room. When I graduated, I didn't have any intentions of going to college. I went to work on the Phantom, which was the world's largest sailing ship that was owned by a cruise line in the Caribbean. Worked there for 6 weeks or so on the Phantom before I ended up coming back to Texas. I came back and went to Colorado for a short period of time, and then came back to Texas and ended up in an automobile accident. Recovering from that is when I decided to go to college, and school was starting the next week. I went to East Texas State University for 1 year, and enjoyed some photography classes, enjoyed my economics classes, but didn't do too well at any of the rest of them, and so I just stayed for that 1 year. I never really thought that I would work for my dad, but I did go to work for him, which was a good experience. I wasn't making a lot of money. I remember he paid me $375 a month. For those last several years that I'd been working for my dad, I'd also become very good friends with a gentleman named Bill Lyde, and Bill was in the same office building that my dad's business was in. And Bill was in the non-standard automobile business, and he owned an insurance company. And I was always intrigued that he had been able to start this insurance company and owned his own company. We were an agency as opposed to a company, and it seemed like a lot of the money that was being made was on the company side. And so I got very intrigued with Bill's business and was always asking him questions about what he had done over the years and how he had grown up. And Bill and I became very close friends.
I remember you used to come down, visit with me from your dad's office. I guess you didn't want to go out and make cold calls or something, and ask me about my business. And you weren't very bashful about it, kind of nosy, but not obnoxious. And for some reason, I took a liking to you and spent much of the time you wanted. And we visited several times that way. Sometimes we went to the neighborhood bar for a little bit too long, but I didn't want to be a bad influence on you. But anyway, you disappeared there then for a month or two, or You remember how long it was? You went out to California in that Nissan you had.
Out there for a couple of weeks. It seemed like all of the great ideas and new marketing ideas and new products and different things came out of California, and San Diego to San Francisco. And I traveled around and I visited at different points, different people in the insurance business. And I would always ask the people who the most successful person they knew in the insurance business was. And I would call that person up and I would ask them if I could come visit with them and talk to that person and find out how they made money, what they did, what was new in the business, and that type of thing. It was shortly after I got back from the California trip that I moved to Houston. And so I went to Houston in the summer of 1979. Moving to Houston turned out to be a great move for me because I ended up with some terrific friends. I think I've heard you throughout my life tell me that to be a friend, you have to have a friend. I think it's very important to figure out who your friends are and who you want to hang with. It's been a great move for me. It's helped me find purpose in life. You know, we all get influenced by our friends. And having the right people around you throughout life is really important because we can't do this alone. Actually, we weren't on the second floor down from Coldstone. We were on the first floor. I forgot. Our first office of SureTech was right here. It was later, as we expanded and needed more space than that we moved to the second floor across the street.
I think it's not so much the making of the money, but seeing a business grow and knowing that I'm really creating something. I think that's where the real positive feelings come from.
When John looks at a problem, he looks at it from every angle possible. He'll talk to everybody who has any knowledge about it. He'll talk both sides of the argument, which as somebody who works with him would be very frustrating because you'll be arguing with him and next thing you know you're on the totally opposite side of where he is. But it's his method of making sure that he has looked at everything from every angle before he makes a decision.
He put the lessons he learned from everybody else, the good ones, into real good use. And when he learned the bonding business, it was the type of business that he wanted. He learned all about it, and that's the reason why he started his own company.
I have had the pleasure and privilege of working with a lot of very bright people in my life. The one thing that sets John apart, and I'll put it in computer terms, it's processor speed. You can take a set of facts and concepts, maybe concepts that he doesn't know anything about, and explain it to him thinking that you've got another 15 minutes to explain the significance of whatever it is you're explaining. And in about 30 seconds, he's not only figured it out, he's figured out how all the pieces fit together and how you can make them better. I'm absolutely blown away by the speed at which John processes information.
If I had a need, a concern, something that needed to be addressed either personally or business-wise, I wouldn't hesitate calling John. And I always feel confident that the response I'd get would be a very honest, straightforward response. It wouldn't necessarily be the response I might want from John, but he'd always give me the response that I would need for the circumstance.
When I moved to Houston in 1979, Houston was boomtown. I came down here to start a new agency representing Bill Lyde's company, and all excited to start growing. The oil industry was booming, and so Houston was booming in 1979. And I don't think I'll ever forget the date, October 10th, 1979. I got an eviction notice on my office and on my apartment on the same day because I couldn't pay the rent. And I thought, and I think it was the Houston Post that week who had an article that said, if you can't make it in Houston, you can't make it anywhere. And that was not a very encouraging time in my life. But I kept scraping it together and ended up getting enough money to pay the rent and